Georgie O'Connor here, big up Julius, Ring IQ, welcome to the relay.
Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. This past weekend, on the undercard of Zepeda versus Diaz, reigning IBF flyweight champion of Argentina, Leonela Paola Yudica, traveled to America in defense of her blue belt, in defense of her IBF title against former WBO champion of Mexico, Arely Muciño. And as I predicted, as I expected, Arely Muciño did in fact pry the blue belt away from Leonela Paola Yudica. Let's talk about how. Well, you know, Arely Muciño is nicknamed the machine gun for a reason. She's no defensive wizard. She's no defensive specialist. In fact, defensively, she's got a lot of holes that are getting bigger. But offensively...
Offense is her area of expertise. Mid-range to inside pressure fighting and volume punching. That's what she does. That's what she's good at, and that's what she did against the reigning champion.
Though not without taking some lumps, not without being on the receiving end of many counterpunches, many counter shots from the reigning champion, who chose to fight the fight, most of it, on her back foot, circling away, and in effect, giving up ground to the advancing Arely Muciño. This is not a strategy that you want to employ when you're the away fighter, even if you are the reigning champion.
You don't want to spend that much time with your back against the ropes. You really don't want to spend that much time on your back foot. This causes a lot of confusion in the boxing community.
There's a thin line. There's a thin line between setting up a counter shot. There's a thin line between setting a trap and retreating.
Backpedal too much. If you backpedal too often, even if you are trying to set up a trap, outside looking in, it's open to interpretation.
To an onlooker, it might very well look like you're setting up a trap, but to another onlooker, it might look like you're getting pushed around, like you're getting out-muscled. You're retreating as to not...
Remember that Arely Muciño, the woman opposite the ring, Leonela Paola Yudica, she throws a lot of punches. She's a volume puncher.
Arely Muciño is. In ringside, where the judges are sitting, well, they ain't got the same vantage point that the people at home have got. Believe it or not, the people at home have several vantage points to what's actually going on in the fight, whereas the guys ringside, the judges,
they've really only got one. It's not that Leonela Paola Yudica wasn't getting off her counter shots. It's that in spite of that, that didn't stop Arely Muciño from coming forward.
Two fighters in a fight, one's coming forward, one's moving backwards. Two fighters in a fight, one's throwing a lot of punches and...
one isn't, or not throwing as many.
Not throwing as many punches as the other fighter. Leonela Paola Yudica pasted Arely Muciño's face with several well-placed counter shots, well-placed counter punches, but what's consistent is that it never stopped Arely Muciño from coming forward. She wasn't discouraged, and she still was the busier puncher.
My honest opinion, in my heart of hearts, this fight could have been scored a draw.
Could have been scored a draw because Arely's offense, you know, it wasn't always effective aggression.
And she wasn't ragdolling the reigning champion. She wasn't ragdolling Yudica per se.
You know, post-fight, if you looked at the two fighters, Arely Muciño's face was worse for wear, a lot worse than Leonela Paola Yudica's. Hell, Leonela didn't have a scratch on her.
Arely had a nice-sized hematoma on her left eye, above it.
What's it say when what's supposed to be the busier puncher ends up with all the lumps and bumps, and the other fighter...
What's it say about their quote-unquote effective aggression?
The other fighter doesn't have a scratch on them. They're no worse for wear. What's it really say? The problem here is, at least for me, Yudica spent too much time on the back foot, too much time backpedaling, circling away and retreating. She spent too much time doing that as the away fighter. It's almost naive to think that you can win a championship boxing match boxing solely on your back foot.
In my heart of hearts, I think the fight could have and should have been scored a draw. I think that, but I'm not naive.
Quite the opposite. Being a boxing fan for as many years as I've been a boxing fan has made me quite cynical. You go...
Arely Muciño was the house fighter, so in many ways she had home field advantage.
Leonela, in spite of being the champion, was the away fighter. And as the away fighter, you don't want to spend that much time shifting your weight to your back foot to set up counter shots, because outside looking in, it's going to look like you're retreating.
Especially against the volume puncher, a puncher that throws punches in bunches, head punches, body shots. We saw some really good body shots, some good left hooks from Arely Muciño.
The then reigning champion, Leonela Paola Yudica, she took them well. She showed good durability, good heart in this fight, but she just wasn't busy enough. Not busy enough as the away fighter. Perhaps if the fight were fought in Argentina, Yudica's clean counter shots and boxing and movement would have gotten her the benefit of the doubt.
But as the away fighter, the visiting fighter, you can't rely on the benefit of the doubt.
Arely Muciño was awarded a split decision win over Leonela Paula Yudica. Split decision. That does exhibit some acknowledgement of Yudica's clean counters and good boxing. I wouldn't mind seeing them run it back, but once again, I'm not naive. In all likelihood, Arely Muciño is going to go straight into a Marlen Esparza unification match. Both Arely and Marlen, they're Golden Boy Promotions fighters. That was the whole rhyme and reason behind this title fight. Bringing Yudica over for Arely to have a world title shot, world title opportunity to unify with Marlen should she win, and she did. Perhaps not cleanly, perhaps not emphatically, but I told you, home field advantage would play a factor, and it did. No, Arely wasn't in her native Mexico, but she was the house
Congratulations to the newly crowned IBF flyweight champion.
Cheers,
I
mate.
think you're a tosser, you little tosser. And I won't be doing any more interviews with you little toss-top bearded.
No worries, mate. Thanks very much.
Kiss my balls, you little one. You little shit house.
Have you worked out how to close this phone? Are you all right? Hit the button at the bottom.
Very disgruntled Tyson Fury reacting to True Geordie's line of questioning. True Geordie, a very popular content creator here on YouTube, who sat down with Tyson Fury and, you know, he had a couple of questions for him about the Anthony Joshua fight, and how is it that Derek Chisora, who's managed by the same management company as Anthony Joshua,
258 management,
got the same management company, you understand. Yet when Tyson Fury was dealing with Anthony Joshua, he immediately put time constraints and deadlines on the negotiations, whereas with Derek, he seemed a lot more lenient. It was these questions and more that seemed to have made Tyson Fury quite upset and uncomfortable.
Geordie asked him about that stuff, asked him about the Chisora fight.
I think.
What is it that you're getting at here anyway?
What I'm getting at is, I think the Chisora fight you're charging the great British public hard-earned money to watch this on pay-per-view, and when you've already beaten him twice and he's shown that he is nowhere near up to your level.
Twice, and people still paid for it.
I think Deontay Wilder is of a much more dangerous fight, hence why he put you down multiple times, whereas Chisora, he ain't going to put you down if he's in there with a hammer with you.
You know he can't put anybody down.
Well, I'm not saying he can't put anyone down, it's just he won't put you down.
True Geordie's interview with Tyson Fury harkens back to a time when interviewers actually asked real questions and not softball questions like what you see from the ES News guy.
Nobody cares what Mikey Garcia ordered at Del Taco.
Nobody cares how many miles he's put on his Bugatti. These are not questions that fight fans want or need answers to. True Geordie's line of questioning.
It really does harken back to a time when journalists were journalists and interviewers asked real questions, tough ones.
When interviewers were persistent in the pursuit of information, when interviewers were persistent in the pursuit of the truth.
I almost felt like I was watching John Stossel or Barbara Walters or somebody.
Because True Geordie did a very good job of at least trying to get to the truth, trying to sift through the showmanship and word sandwiches from Tyson Fury to get a clear answer about certain subjects that fight fans want answers to. And you could see almost immediately that Tyson Fury didn't like it. He didn't like where the conversation was going. He didn't like the line of questioning, even though the questions themselves, they were legitimate questions.
In order to do a fight with Anthony Joshua, you got to talk to the same people you talk to do a fight with Derek Chisora.
It's the same management company. But outside looking in, it really does look like Tyson Fury, quite deliberately, it looks a lot like he gave Derek Chisora more time to make a decision and come to an agreement. He gave Derek more time than he gave Anthony, even though a fight with Anthony was worth substantially more money.
Why would he do that?
They blamed it on these deadlines you set, and I guess the confusion.
Yeah, I don't blame them for blaming it on the deadlines. Probably good bit of blaming. Deadlines, you know. If there's a deadline set, you know what a deadline means, don't we?
Yeah, we all know what a deadline is, and we all know what a deadline means. And you didn't give Derek Chisora a deadline, did you? But you gave Anthony one. Why? The fight with Anthony was worth more money than the fight with Derek.
Do we all know what a deadline means?
Yeah, we all know what a deadline means. It means that you gave Anthony less time to negotiate a fight with you than you gave Derek.
You didn't give Derek a deadline.
I hear you, yeah. I mean,
if you don't do something in a certain time when someone's chucking you a bone or giving you a job, then you lose that opportunity. And that opportunity is now flown. So, you know, it's no interest what they do in their lives or their careers. I wish them nothing but the best of luck.
The confusion comes from the outside looking in anyway, and this is something that a lot of your fans have commented on, is Chisora has the same promoter, same management team, and yet he didn't get a deadline. Is there a reason for that?
Chisora didn't get a deadline. Chisora just agreed to fight.
Or publicly, there was no deadline to our knowledge, because obviously you made it very public about the AJ deadline, whereas Chisora seemed to get extra time, and that seemed to be a much smoother process. Why was that different?
Chisora's got balls. There's no P's and Q's about it.
Well, he's got balls. He's definitely got balls. Derek Chisora is one of the ballsier fighters of the previous era and this one to some degree, but that doesn't necessarily address the question. He never gave Derek the deadlines, the public deadlines, that he gave Anthony Joshua. In fact, he offered Derek to fight first.
Yeah, before the AJ stuff even kicked off, before any of that even started, he offered Derek to fight. They couldn't reach a deal at first.
The AJ stuff kicks off. That goes on for a little while. Doesn't work out. He comes back around to Derek.
In effect, giving Derek more time to negotiate a fight, more time to make a decision.
Why would you give Derek Chisora more time to come to an agreement with you than you gave Anthony when a fight with Anthony is worth more money? A lot more money.
Doesn't really make a lot of sense, and that's why True Georgie thought it necessary to all.
Chisora's got balls. Stepped up to the plate, agreed to the fight, agreed to everything that was on the table.
Now, I have no doubts that he did, but Tyson Fury, Frank Warren, Frank's son George, who were supposedly trying to negotiate this fight with Anthony, they would know better than most that it's going to be easier to negotiate a fight with Derek than it is with Anthony. With Anthony, you're going to need more time, and Tyson Fury didn't allow that time.
It's a more complex set of negotiations with a guy who has endorsements and corporate sponsorships, rights issues. You know, Anthony does have an exclusivity deal with DAZN. It's a more complex set of negotiations that requires more time to sift through. And Tyson Fury...
We did it backwards. You gave Derek more time than you gave Anthony, even though the Anthony-Joshua negotiations are what require more time, not Derek.
Moreover, he didn't answer the question. Why did you give Anthony a deadline and not Derek? You gave Derek more time than you gave Anthony.
Doesn't make any fucking sense.
So what is it that you're getting at here anyway?
What I'm getting at is... I think the Chisora fight is you're charging the Great British public hard-earned money to watch this on pay-per-view, and when you've already beaten him twice and he's shown that he is nowhere near up to your level.
Twice, and people still paid for it.
Yeah, but not as many people paid for the third fight as they did for the second. The second fight did about 800,000 buys. The third fight did 200,000 buys less than the second fight did. It did 600,000.
Less people were interested, the same way that less people are interested in this fight than the first two.
Moreover, you fought Deontay for a third time because, at least based on the story, he didn't leave you with much of a choice. Mediation arbitration, remember? You had to fight him again.
You don't have to fight Derek again. You're choosing to fight Derek again.
This isn't the result of a mediator's ruling.
This trilogy isn't. You're voluntarily doing this.
Can't compare those two situations.
Put yourself across as you're about, which is why there's some confusion there for your fans. You're like...
Well, it's also history-making.
Why is it history-making?
I'm going to enlighten you.
Okay.
I'll be the first heavyweight champion in history to complete 2 trilogies. So now you know why it makes more sense to fight him than some foreign person who nobody knows.
So Tyson Fury's saying that the reason he's fighting Derek Chisora again, voluntarily, is because he wants to make history. Is this the same Tyson Fury who in this same interview said he doesn't care about legacy, he doesn't care how he's remembered?
No interest in legacy, no interest in being remembered, no interest in belts.
Then what difference does it make if you're the first heavyweight to complete 2 trilogies? You don't want to be remembered, remember?
So also, you take the top 15. There is a few foreigners in there who nobody knows about. Yeah, with undefeated records. But when I fight them foreigners, people are not interested anyway.
He's not completely wrong, you know, he's actually right. He can't go in there with a Pulev, or a Takam, or a Povetkin, and draw what he might draw with a more well-known fighter, because Tyson Fury himself, he doesn't have Anthony's drawing power.
Anthony Joshua's.
The disconnect, however, is that Anthony never let that stop him from fighting someone that needed to be fought.
Well, he never said, well, nobody knows this guy, so I'm not going to fight him.
You're better off with somebody you know who's a household name.
Yeah, Tyson, you need a household name because you by yourself, you can't sell it.
What did I tell you guys before? The reason he's fighting Derek Chisora is because he needs somebody who can help him sell tickets.
It's not that there weren't other options out there for Tyson Fury. There were, but Tyson Fury himself, he's not the same draw that Anthony is, so you can't just stick him in there with anybody and get a big box office fight. Drum up big box office business.
And that's why he's fighting Derek Chisora, because the UK public is quite familiar with Derek.
That doesn't make this any less frivolous, but that is Tyson Fury's hierarchy of thought. That's why he's fighting Derek.
And somebody you can't even say the guy's name, who we've never heard of.
I reiterate, that never stopped Anthony Joshua from fighting guys who needed to be fought. Pulev ain't got some big following in the UK. Neither does Povetkin, or Usyk for that matter.
You never heard AJ use that as an excuse to not fight a guy. Tyson Fury, on the other hand,
he could be shit, he could be good. So you pick somebody out the top 15. Pick one.
This is why Tyson Fury doesn't like the line of questioning, because it reveals what his true intentions are and why Derek is getting this fight.
I mean, it's never going to go over well with either Tyson Fury or Frank Warren.
It's never going to go over well with either of them when you tell them that you don't see the point in a Derek Chisora fight, that someone of Tyson Fury's ilk, someone of his stature, should find someone better.
Especially for a box office fight, especially for a pay-per-view.
You ought to find somebody better to fight.
Is Chisora has the same promoter, same management team, and yet he didn't get a deadline.
Let's just cut the crap, okay? Tyson Fury's not going to like this line of questioning because it puts his effort, quote-unquote efforts, to face Anthony Joshua before this year was out. It puts those efforts under scrutiny because it just doesn't make sense.
He's not going to like this line of questioning because it puts his Derek Chisora trilogy in a harsh light as well. This Chisora trilogy is being billed as a pay-per-view. It's a byproduct of the Anthony Joshua fight's collapse. But how hard did you really try to make that fight?
How earnest were your efforts when you were imposing deadline after deadline in what is a far more complex fight to negotiate than this one? You want people to believe that the only reason you're fighting Derek Chisora for a third time is because Anthony didn't want to fight you. But Anthony wasn't the one putting time constraints on his negotiations with you. You were putting time constraints on negotiations. You were doing that.
Yeah, maybe you can fool a couple of hillbillies with that stuff, but anyone with any iota
and one iota of common sense will tell you that, well, in order to do a fight with Anthony, you have to deal with 258 management, and in order to do a fight with Derek, you have to deal with 258 management. You're essentially dealing with the same people, but when it came to Anthony, you gave him less time, even though the fight with Anthony is worth more money. That just doesn't make sense.
Not with the paying public, not with the people you aspire to sell this Derek Chisora trilogy to. What they're asking themselves is, were you really trying to fight Anthony, or was this all just a publicity stunt?
Because it's starting to look that way. Tyson Fury doesn't want to be scrutinized for this. That's why he was so irritable, so standoffish and combative. That's why the interview ended the way that it did.
Tyson Fury doesn't want people asking him legitimate questions. He wants softball questions.
The truth is, it's never going to go over well with Tyson Fury when you ask him real questions.
And that's all the true Georgie did.